All right, I think we are ready to go ahead and get started here. Okay, so hello everyone. Welcome to the first episode of our Avid for Automation series here at Ashling Partners. In this short 30-minute episode, we're going to roll up our sleeves and get technical with 3 different demos showcasing the different methods of integration with UiPath. And I'm excited today because we're going to look at one of UiPath's latest features, which is integration service, which has arrived in the 2021.10 release, and also compare it to other methods of integration. So integration services is all about quickly and painlessly connecting your disparate applications and services together and making it as easy as possible to direct the information flow. It's a huge quality of life improvement for developers, which often translates to faster results for businesses. And with that said, let's get into the jam-packed agenda here. We're going to cover all things integration and take us across 3 different demos today. First, for those that are relatively unfamiliar to RPA, we'll detail out UI-based integration and see a short demo of that in action. Second, we'll look at the existing abilities to integrate directly with APIs and have a marvelous time with our second demo. Next, we'll look at integration service and what it adds to the UiPath product stack before showcasing it in our final demo. If we have time, we'll even dig into our automation to see the nuts and bolts of how it works against integration service. And I'll walk you through the integration service interface in Automation Cloud and really just show you how easy it is to set up connections and triggers. And finally, we'll try to leave about 5 minutes at the end for some Q&A. But for any questions that we aren't able to get to today, just know that we'll follow up with you to answer those. And before I get too far in, I should briefly introduce myself. My name's David Kroll, and I head up our solutions engineering team here at Ashling Partners. And I really love my job because I get to explore new concepts and build fun demos to showcase what can be achieved with intelligent automation tools, just like UiPath. But of course, before I was allowed to play in the sand, I was in fact responsible for building many real-life applications that utilized many of the integration principles that we're going to look at today. And with that said, let's chat about the first and most common form of integration in UiPath, one that many of you are very much probably familiar with, but we still want to cover briefly just in case there are folks on the phone that haven't heard of it or haven't used it before. And that is UI-based integration. Or the simulation of user interfaces with RPA software to extract and manipulate data systems and services. It is, of course, the feature that put RPA on the map. From a pro's standpoint, it's fantastic for getting at data quickly, especially if it's off websites, downloaded files, or other hard to reach places. We know that UI interfaces can be a challenge, especially with legacy systems, and RPA really eliminates a lot of that pain by automating that away. If you click it, you can do it. And sometimes APIs don't really allow for the same operations that can be automated with UI-based integration. And of course, if there is no API, well, UI-based automation is often your only option. On the con side of things, it's usually a bit slower than an API, especially when looping through multiple items or trying to execute batch operations. You'll need a user license to the systems and services that you want the robot to interact with. And of course, we are often at the mercy of the system. So if the interface is slow, guess what? So is the robot. So do we by chance have any fantasy sports fanatics on the call today? If so, you'll probably enjoy this first demo. In this short two-minute video, we're going to scrape player data and team data off of a fantasy sports website to generate a newsletter for our fantasy soccer league. I hope you forgive me for running this first demo as a video. Some of my friends' fantasy team names were a bit too colorful for a business meeting, so I asked them to rename their teams and recorded the extraction for you. So what we're looking at here first is this demo kicks off here. We're looking at the Word document, the Word template that we want to populate with the important player data from our website. We've got our robot set up here to navigate to the browser, extract the information off of various tables on the website, as well as download the player data as an Excel file. And so when we run this robot, we'll see it kick off, ask us a few details. In this case, it wants to know which game week to look at, and if we want to put a tagline on our newsletter, which if we have any English Premier League fans here, they'll understand that tagline. But it goes out to the Fantrax website, pulls down the data, extracts it out of several different tables, and brings down that Excel file. And once it has all that data, it can bring that forward and start to process it, right? So in this case, it's populating that Word document with all the information that we just extracted off the website. So for a fantasy league commissioner like myself who sends out these newsletters every week, this saves me at least 2 hours of my time, which I can then put back to chasing my dog around the house, which is wonderful. So we'll just let this finish up here real quick, but you can see it's going through and it's populating all those different variables with the data based off the top performers for that game week, and also staggering and ordering the waiver wire order, which is really just, who's allowed to claim trades first. So once this robot is completed, it generates a newsletter for us. And if we can, of course, open that up, make any final changes to that before we send it out to our, to our league, which is great. All right. So now that you've seen UI-based integration, let's move on to our next form of integration in UiPath, direct API integration via HTTP request. This has existed in UiPath for some time, but it's not to be confused with integration service. HTTP requests are powerful, but they can take a lot of time to configure. On the left-hand side of the screen here, you can see an example HTTP request wizard with the response there kind of previewed, and how we might have to parse that out to get our desired data for things like, name, gender, height, weight, occupation, and so forth. From a pros standpoint, HTTP request and direct API integration is extremely powerful. You can use it for everything from downloading an image or a file off a particular website to making a complex API request or a set of batch operations. It's quite performant. It skips the interface step entirely, so we can get exactly what we need, which means the bot runs faster. And with each iteration, that of course adds more capabilities for ROI there. It's a solid choice for bulk operations. Think of situations where you might need to add 50 contacts at once into Salesforce in one call or one operation. Unfortunately, it often requires a developer resource or significant time for a technical resource to research that backend API to really make sure that we are calling it correctly, interpreting the response correctly. Forgive me there, because APIs are provided by third parties as well, and we can't really control them, so they can vary greatly in quality and speed. So now it's time for our second demo, which is going to showcase this form of integration. And before I jump into it, I'm going to run a quick poll here, so please help me out. I'm going to go ahead and launch this, so you'll get a little pop-up, and if you can go ahead and vote for your favorite superhero from the list below, I'd really appreciate it. And if we have a tie, we'll just have to do more than one. And I'll give it about 30 seconds here before I move forward. All right. It looks like Iron Man is the clear winner with a tie for second and third. Ooh, no. We have a tie for second with the Hulk. So I'm going to go ahead and end the poll now and share the results so you guys can all see that. Looks like Iron Man is our most popular one. That's a shame he's no longer around. Spoiler alert. But let's go ahead and take that into our demo. All right, just a second here. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and you can see here I've got my UiPath assistant, and I have my search for a superhero process deployed out here. I'm going to go ahead and run my search for a superhero operation. It's going to ask me for my superhero, and because I like to please a crowd, we're going to go ahead and put Iron Man in here as our first one. So when we populate that information, that's going to hit our superhero API, which is an API that sits on the internet at this address, actually. And we can use that name to bring back information about that particular character. So in this case, we're able to bring in the image, the alias, the real name, the publisher, gender, weight, height, and occupation, which is pretty fun. So just a really quick example showing you how you can go out and use an API to very quickly pull information based off of very minimal information that you're putting into it. Because I want to kind of show that this isn't a stage demo here, we'll go ahead and run this again. And this time we're just going to put in Hulk. Let me make sure I typed that right. So in this case, you can see we put Hulk in and there he is. So we've got Bruce Banner in here now, and you can see he weighs, 1,400 pounds, which is quite crazy, and 8 feet tall. While being a nuclear physicist, I feel like I'm a little bit lacking in my life now, but that's okay. We'll go ahead and close that out. And thank you so much for participating in that. That's just a really cool little demo showcasing the ability to interact directly with API integration. All right, let's move forward here. So you're probably wondering, if I have UI-based integration and API-based integration, why the heck do I need integration service? And the answer is actually quite simple. It makes integration, no matter which method you choose, much faster and easier to achieve. Integration service is a massive quality of life improvement for integration. UiPath has put together an interface to centralize the connections to common line of business systems. Think Outlook, Salesforce, SAP, and more. And there are many, many more connectors on the way. I see anywhere from 5 to 10 added per month, and they often show up in preview format before they get officially released. So we know they're doing all the proper testing and due diligence against those connections. Using integration service, you can easily set up a service account, for example, to use Outlook to send emails for your automations, and you can reuse those across the different automations that you're building. You can set up independent connections to your development and production Salesforce environments, and then reuse those across the automations that you build. The connections are centralized, reusable integrations across the entire UiPath platform. And they are selected as well during the design of robots. So as you build out the different activities and you tell your robot what to do, you tell it to point at which particular connection that you've set up. Triggers are an exciting new add as well. What triggers are, they essentially allow you to detect changes in backend systems. So, for an example, an email may arrive or a file might get uploaded, we can detect those events and then initiate an RPA execution off of that. UiPath has also published a series of activity packs to install in Studio that greatly simplify working with your connections. These activity packs are essentially wizards. They can be deployed into your Studio environment, and instead of having to hone and craft an HTTP request with all the specific parameters and variables, in this particular sense, you are able to pull forward an activity that allows you to kind of step through that and build out the component to achieve the functionality that you want, whether it's injecting a record into Salesforce or just posting out to Slack. The list of connectors is large at 35. Keep in mind that this just went into GA back in December, so expect to see this list of connectors grow significantly over the next year. This integration service is actually based off of Cloud Elements acquisition, and I believe at the time they were acquired, I think they had over 200 connectors. So I'm expecting that a lot of those connectors are going to be rolled out into the UiPath integration service over the coming year. Real quick here, I'm going to show you all the connectors. So if I go back here, this is the first page. I'm going to give you a few seconds in case you want to take a screenshot here. If you have any systems on this list that are relevant to you. All right, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, we'll go to the next one. And you can see we have everything from Outlook, Salesforce, Zendesk, Twilio, Workday. I mean, there's a lot of common line of business systems here that we can leverage. All right. So now that we've done that, let's get into our third demo. Can you believe we're already at our third demo and we're only 18 minutes in? So now that we have all of these connectors at our fingertips, we're going to run a demo that brings together no fewer than 4 backend systems, and I'm not even including Excel on that count. So let's do a quick time check here. I think we said we were 18 minutes. If I have some extra time at the end, we can even dig into the process XAML and see how these components were constructed. So let me go ahead and bring forward that demo. All right. So what we have on the background, we have a Salesforce environment that you can see here. It doesn't have any accounts other than this Edge Communications, which is just the default trial account. You can ignore it. No contacts. I have no files in my Box drive other than the Get Started with Box. And I have a Slack channel in here that I'm going to post to with a robot. Also, we're going to send a text message using Twilio. And when that text message actually gets sent, it's going to populate in this list, and we'll be able to click on it and take a peek at what occurred there. If I hop over to my, I want to first bring up my spreadsheet here. So we're going to load this spreadsheet into our robot. And this is going to essentially create a Salesforce contact for each row. And it's going to create a account contact for each company. So you can see we do have some duplicates in here. So it should go through and create 4 new companies with 8 new contacts. And then it'll even go so far as to associate those contacts to the particular accounts that are created. We're then going to pass that information forward. We're going to update this account ID column with the account ID from Salesforce. Once these accounts are created, we need to reference them correctly. So the account ID is going to come in and populate there. And then we're going to upload that file into Box with the updated IDs. We're going to post to Slack that we have some new contacts and accounts to work with. And then we're going to send a text message to our field agent to let them know that they have a file in Box that they need to reference and check up on. So let me close out that spreadsheet real quick here. And I'm just going to go back to this tab. We're going to minimize this, and we are going to bring up our integration services demo. Just a moment here. Okay. So in this demo, you can see we're kicking off that process. As I mentioned, we're extracting the data out of our spreadsheet, storing it for processing. And then you can kind of see how it goes into each of the different scopes. And these scopes are essentially configured against the UiPath integration service. So I can go in and say, all right, I want to create an account for each company, create related contacts. Then I want to create a Slack message. I want to add the file into Box, and then send the text message to our account owner that everything's completed. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to run this in debug mode. And I'm going to set it to run a little bit slower so you can actually see what's happening. It's going to step through everything here in the middle of your screen. So let's go ahead and run the operation. And you'll start to see the log file on the left get populated as it steps through all these different steps. We've already extracted the data out of our spreadsheet, and now we're going through and adding the different accounts into Salesforce. And when we add those accounts into Salesforce, it gives us a corresponding ID. That ID is what we're storing. We're putting that in the spreadsheet to upload into Box later. So you can see now we're going through each row in our spreadsheet and associating it to the correct account ID based off the company they work for. And now we're going and we're adding those contacts into Salesforce. Again, we're not navigating the Salesforce interface. This is all happening via the API. And the integration service allows us to work with that API in a much faster way. Now we've already done everything in Salesforce. We've already posted to Slack. We're uploading that file into Box. And that's completed. Now we're capturing the link from Box, and we're sending that out in our link to Twilio. We're sending a text message. All right, just like that, it's all completed in about a minute. Let me minimize my UiPath Studio here, and we can check out and see if this all worked correctly. So if I go back to Salesforce, right, and I refresh my list of accounts, you'll see that I have 4 new accounts in there for the 4 new accounts that were in my spreadsheet. If I click on the contacts and refresh that as well, you'll see that we have brought in all the contacts with all their related information from the spreadsheet. If I go back to the accounts and I click on, for example, Grady Hill and Erdman, you can see that I've even been able to reference those contacts to the particular account that I created. So really this shows not just the ability to post information into Salesforce, but the ability to respond to the information that we get back from Salesforce. When I create an account, what's the account ID? Great, let's then map our contacts to that account ID, right? Pretty powerful stuff. And this is really just scratching the surface in what you can do in Salesforce. There's probably like thousands of operations that you can hit. If I go to Box and I refresh it, you'll see that I have my new customers spreadsheet. And if I open up this spreadsheet, this should have the IDs. Yep, and there it goes. If you recall, this account ID was, it was blank in our original spreadsheet. And you can see here, for Grady, Hill, and Erdman, those 3 IDs match. This ID, while it looks similar, it is a little different. There's a 1 instead of a 6 there. And then, of course, these are different and these are different. So we have been able to map those IDs and store them back in our spreadsheet, which is great if we ever need to process that further. If we swing on over to Slack, we can see that our robot has posted into the channel. And not only has it told our Avengers to assemble, but we have added 8 new contacts from 4 new companies in Salesforce. So here we're counting what we're doing, what we're adding. If you want to bring back that information and post that as well, as far as the individual contacts, definitely something that we can do. The new customer spreadsheet, again, that's just essentially copying that same file from Box and posting it into Slack. And then lastly, if we go into our Twilio logs and we filter this real quick, this should get updated. There we go. So at 3:19 Eastern time, it sent a text message from this number to my cell phone. And if I click on that, it will give me all the details about that. So I can see that in the body of that text, it said, Agent Kroll, you have received 4 new accounts to review. The file has been uploaded for your review. Let's just make sure that link works. And it does. I wanted to kind of bring it up and show it to you on my cell phone, but I would much rather have a stable network connection than try to connect to my spotty Wi-Fi in the corner of my house. So you'll have to trust me that that text message sent, but it is, you can see from Twilio that it has officially, the message was sent and delivered to that particular device, which is just great. All right, so that kind of completes our demonstration of integration service. And so next, I really want to dig into, integration service a little bit. So let's actually go back and open up integration service. So where am I at now? I am on our automation cloud environment, our solutions engineering tenant here. I can click on integration service, and that brings forward all the different connectors that I was showing you in the PowerPoint deck. And so it's really easy to go in and get started. You can click on any one of these, and then once you establish a connection with it, which there will be typically an authentication and a trust activity where you're not only authenticating to the backend connector, but you're allowing it to do certain things on behalf of that account. So for example, with Outlook, you might give it access to read and send emails and so on and so forth. So once the connectors are set up, they're added into this connector list, and you can have more than one instance of a connection to a backend service. So like I was saying earlier, you could have 2 connections in here for Salesforce, one for dev, one for production. You could also have 2 different connections in here for Salesforce for different users to the same production environment, in case you want to have segregation of duties or just assign different permissions to the different accounts to make sure that one account doesn't have too much access to Salesforce, which is usually a good idea. So as those connections are configured, we can also build triggers against them. And this is the event component that I was talking about earlier, where maybe what we want to do is we want to say, hey, whenever you send a text message out from this particular connection, I want to run a process from my environment. So you can see how simple it is to go through and set that up. So, okay, if a new record is created and that record is the messages, right? The SMS messages that are being sent, we want to immediately run a process. And that process could be a notification. It could be, a lot more complicated than a notification. The sky is the limit here in terms of what you can do, but that's how you can go through and set up triggers. Really cool feature. I'm really interested personally, like, from a geek standpoint, just to kind of see what happens with this, if it truly evolves into a true webhook where things immediately happen the second you add a record, that it like immediately happens. But I believe the way it's structured right now, there's about a 5-minute polling interval. So every 5 minutes, it checks the backend environment to see if a new text message has been sent. And really that delay could be anywhere from 1 second all the way up to 5 minutes. But I know that the team is working hard to shorten that down and get that down to potentially 3 minutes and even lower in the future as they start to approach that true webhook level integration, which is pretty cool. All right, it looks like we've got 5 minutes left on our webinar. The last thing I'm going to do here before I shift into questions, I just want to show you a little bit under the hood. So I'm going to click and open up our Salesforce scope here, and I just want to show you how this is configured. If I go in and I click configure on my Salesforce scope, it'll bring forward the connections that I've set up in integration service. So this, you literally, all you have to do is set up the integration service, come in here, and then connect it to your robot. And then you can test it and make sure that everything's working. And once everything's working, it's really easy to work with activities. I can come into my integration service, I can expand out into Salesforce, and I can manipulate any component within Salesforce. And you might be asking me, well, this sure doesn't seem like a lot of methods to work with Salesforce. Well, that's actually not the case. There's actually a ton in here. So let me show you this. If I configure this, this is an insert record into Salesforce operation. I'm going to configure this and show you just what you can do in here. You can pick any object in Salesforce and insert records into it. And it all comes in a drop down, you know, whether you want to create a new event, whether you want to create a new customer, whether you want to create a new collaboration group, you can go through, you can pick whatever it is that you want to do, a new order. It brings in the relevant fields for that. You can add in any multiple fields that you would like to add and bring that forward. And then of course you can pass it the values that you want within your automation. So you can see, instead of having a developer have to analyze that API and figure out that these are the fields that I need, I can just go and click on order, get all the fields I want and move forward, which is great. So with that said, I do want to save some time for questions. I'm going to back out here and close this down, and then we'll open up the Q&A. So I think the first question that we have here is all this functionality also available with UiPath Test Suite? I believe the answer to that is yes, in the sense of you can use Test Suite to step through different test cases. And I believe that in this situation, you would be potentially picking the connections for your test cases, right? So maybe when you run through your robot, you want to connect it to your development environment for the test set that you're about to run. And then when you run another test case, you want to run it against production. I'm not entirely sure if you can connect it, but I would be surprised if you couldn't. All right, and I think, let's see, another question. How will this play with other elements of the UiPath platform like UiPath apps? So that's a great question. I think that it's likely that apps and integrations will be linked up, allowing for more complex interactions with backend systems without even having to run an RPA process to make those data calls. I think that would be really cool to see. Which, you know, if you think about it, you know, you only want to have to run a process if you have to run a process. And so any situations where you can speed things up by hitting it directly, that's a good thing. The next question we have here is, how long did the demo take to build? And I think they're referring to the third demo here. So approximately 3 days with a decent amount of RPA knowledge and a little elbow grease and a little bit of learning the integration service. Since it just came out, it was a little bit new to me as well. So we stepped through, and within about 3 to 4 days or so, we were able to put together this demo for you today. Oh, this is an important one. So who's my favorite superhero? I'm a huge nerd. There's so many superheroes that I'm like in love with, but I'm a big fan of Captain America. I'm quite excited though to see Captain Sam take up the shield in the future. So that's going to be pretty cool. Let's see if we have any other questions. And it looks like that is it. And we are right at time. So I want to respect everyone's time here. If you do have any follow-up questions, just reach out to me, david.kroll@ashlingpartners.com. I'm happy to answer those technical questions for you. Thank you so much for your time, and have a great day.